Thank you for joining the session that we're running today around, well, no spare people around employee wellness and what that means as ops and also people leaders. I'm Michaela, so I am from Operations Nation. We have lots of people from the community on today. I know we also have lots of people outside of the community, which is great. I know Audrey's really cute. I'm going to stop looking at the chat. But just I'm going to end the poll now so people can see the results of exactly where we're all at and why we're meeting here today. But the whole idea and why we wanted to run this session in the first place with Yulife, who, just a little tidbit, is one of our new community partners at On, is because we realized that, employee wellness, we know matters, but we also wanted to have the bigger discussion around like why it matters from the ops perspective as well, because a lot of the time it's kind of just saddled into HR or at the individual level. And really, when we're thinking about growing a healthy and sustainable business, we need to be looking at it at company level, probably also societally, but that's a whole other conversation probably. And so anyways, no further ado, we'll get us sorted. I'm going to introduce our wonderful speakers and also spotlight you both, just so we can see your faces. I'm going to spotlight you, Sam and Jonathan. And so Sam is joining us today. He's the co-founder co-founder and COO at Yulife. And so Yulife is an employee benefit and well-being platform. And the cool thing, Sam, I think, because you're the co-founder and COO, you probably have an intrinsic sort of relationship with not only, the purpose behind Yulife, which is around employee well-being, but also as a COO and making sure it's happening. You're keeping the lights on. So I think that's really exciting to have you join us today for this conversation. And then Jonathan, similarly, is the co-founder and COO at Venture Forge. And you have your background, like heaps of background in ops and e-commerce. And then I think from you, what you're seeing is how you, being aware and also wanting to make sure that the employees are well thought after, how you're bringing them in as you're building and scaling a business, where a lot of us today are going to be at. So welcome both. Thank you. And I'll pass it off to you, Sam, to begin.
Thank you very, very much. And it's really great for us to be partnering with Ops Nation. I was part of the original COO Stories community about a decade ago, and the advice and the camaraderie and the friendship and support that I got from COO Stories, at the beginning of the Yulife journey was something that was so meaningful for me, having just like a community of people who thought the same way and were going through the same ups and downs and the same screw ups and the same messes, and that we could, in a safe environment, talk it through and work it through and get solutions from each other was a massive part of my early journey in the business. And so it's really great to be participating in this community, and being part of it in a new way now. This is such a massive problem and such a massive thing that goes through my head. And at the very beginning of Yulife, we have a small team of 10, 15 people. And we had someone who just, clocked off sick like 4 months with a back problem. And I remember that call when he put in is like, I'm sorry, I'm just, I've done my back, I'm going to have surgery, you won't see me for months. I thought, oh my gosh, what do we do? Because we were such a small team and couldn't afford to rehire. And it was a massive drain on the business at that early stage. And this is something that's now like kind of reflected across society, where sickness absence is at a 15-year high in British society, and it costs a fortune. The average, anyone want to take a stab? What's the average number of sick days that an employee and a member of a team takes off each year across? Anyone have a sense? It's the UK average 6, MB's 6, 10. What was your guess, Jonathan? You had you were quite optimistic, weren't you, when we were chatting before?
Yeah, I was way undercooked here, way too optimistic. I was down to kind of 2 to 3, which I know was
shows you're tough. Up north, right? The tough northerners don't take these.
Absolutely,
exactly.
Remember, we were brought up in mines, So
that's
exactly. This is just exactly.
My grandpa was from Blackburn. I don't think he took a sick day in his life, that kind of energy. He worked in metals. He worked in the metal industry from Blackburn. Anyway, it's actually 9.5 days. 9.5 days is the average sick days per year for UK employees. And that's expensive, right? If you think about on an average salary, you're talking average salary 100 to 200 pounds a day on the lower end, and for some of us with maybe software engineering teams or whatever, that can be closer to 300-400 pounds a day. We're looking at thousands and thousands of pounds that are being lost per person. So scale that up as per the size of your team that's being lost for sickness, which costs a fortune for businesses. So we're going to just like draw on some of these broad topics of how on earth do we pinpoint that, spot those trends in advance, and grapple with it from an operational perspective. So just wanted to throw it open, and Jonathan and I are just going to kind of chat about these as we go through. So just throwing it open,
I mean,
yeah.
I guess it's sorry, Sam, to jump in. I guess it's a really tough one to predict. It's a tough one to control. By humans, we are quite delicate. We're delicate in body. We're delicate in mind. And I think that the big and the fairly obvious point here is what can we do as leaders to be as preventative as we possibly can, to set an environment where employee well-being, culture, psychological safety is all thought about every day, just as important as an SOP is, or how you go about servicing your clients. But in your instance, where a team member had a back injury, some things are going to happen and they are unavoidable. And I guess it's about how do you make best laid plans for when the uneventual happens, that you have to then jump in and take care of that. But for me, I guess it has to be about prevention rather than cure.
I mean, the thing is, you say it's unpreventable, and there are certainly some things that you can't prevent.
Yeah,
but I think back
trip
to this
and
chap.
fall over.
No, but this guy who was off sick for like, I'd known it was a problem. Like he'd been not moaning, but like talking about his bad back for months beforehand, and we'd all be like, oh, bless him, like he's got a bad back, whatever. I don't think I actually did anything about it. So had we sent him down some sort of real support route at that point, exactly to your point, I think it probably could have been prevented in that instance, actually.
Yeah, possibly. I guess there's a whole series of questions around what type of role did he do? Did he injure it?
Yeah.
Lifting something as an example,
Yeah,
say manual handling and all that type of stuff. But
yeah,
I do think that this is a slight tangent. Apologies, Sam, but I think post-COVID, as well as more and more businesses moved into a virtual environment, it is more difficult to spot signs of employee illness, undercurrent of issues that might be bubbling under the surface, or dissatisfaction, because we all have this very human trait and habit of appearing on a webinar, appearing on a call or a conversation, straight into the detail, putting our best face on, or acting in a way that you wouldn't. You don't pick up on the subtleties of humanity when you're not together. And I'm sure many business leaders on this call today will be in a virtual environment. Some will be in a physical environment. I'd be very interested to hear from the participants later in the conversation around, do you pick up on those subtleties more when you're a physical workplace or less so when you're in a virtual workplace? Because I think it is tough. Definitely is tough.
It really is. And the thing that we've always grappled with is, how do you strike the balance between finding the first step is to get the data on the back end, at least tracking what's happening post facto. And that gives you a sense of at least understanding the current state you're in. But moving towards that more proactive, it's a balance between, you want to be too intrusive, because I don't want to be checking in with everyone every day, 10-point scale, how's every aspect of your life doing? No one's going to want to answer those questions.
Yeah, and you're right, Sam. Some of that inherent illness or that chronic illness is very personal to people, and some may not want to open up about their private life. But something we talk about in Venture Forge, and we're a relatively small team, is psychological safety. Team members feeling safe and secure to open up conversations that wouldn't typically come into the workplace with their line managers, with their peers, or even with a degree of anonymity. Having those conversations open and honestly allows things to be prevented, allows leadership teams like ourselves to think about, are we doing the right things for our team members? Because I think it's very easy to assume you're doing the right things. And there's a very famous phrase about assumption being the mother of all some things, and I won't repeat that on a live webinar. I think giving team members the mechanism and the opportunity to speak openly allows those conversations to take place. We conduct an anonymous quarterly team member satisfaction survey at Venture Forge, and a monthly pulse moving forward. And that allows team members to talk very openly, not necessarily about their health as such and well-being, but about how they're feeling in role. Are they happy?
Nice.
Do they have the tools they need to do a job well? Are they feeling well supported if under challenge? And Venture Forge is a service business. We work with retailers and brands and manufacturers to further their product opportunities within Amazon and various other marketplaces. But a service industry is tough. Clients put you under pressure, especially a commercial service industry that we're in, and not every day is rosy. And I think it's important that you allow team members to go through challenges, but speak openly about how they're feeling and what we can do about that, more importantly.
Do you use your Yulife app for taking those pulse surveys now that we've
released
that pulse feature?
I did wonder at what point I had to plug Yulife, to be fair.
No, you don't. Please don't.
No, I am joking. But, for everyone's benefit, Yulife, as it develops and it continuously iterates, is now giving our operations team and myself the ability to look at, Sam, you'll word this better than I have, almost pre-sentiment. So what's the pulse of the business? How is the business feeling in the moment? And then you can start to look at metrics like potential burnout, potential issues that are coming down the track. And that may not necessarily give you enough ammunition metaphorically to act upon it, but it allows you to understand something might be coming, and therefore how do we understand that in more detail?
So I want to take this back a step, because you've had experience running a business now for many years, and you've kind of got this experience perspective on it. You realize that you're in a services business, people being well and being able to perform at their best and being there present is crucial to the lifeblood of your company. But at what stage did that
we don't have a business. We don't have a business without our people. We're not selling a product, we're selling people and their minds and their abilities. So
at what stage was that something that was always part of your business philosophy, or did that change? Was there a time when you were like, no, just come on, get up, deliverables work? Or was there a time when you realized that investment in people was actually a crucial part of not just the fluffy stuff, but the hard business deliverable?
I think we've always, Andy and I, who co-founded the business, Andy Banks, our CEO, we both came out of very large corporate retail backgrounds, whereby a beating on a Monday morning was just the done thing when sales weren't performing or when the weather had changed and seasonality had challenged. So we came from quite hardened backgrounds, and whether that's an age thing, whether that's forgive me, anybody who's not Northern on the call, whether it's a Northern thing, back to your point around the coal mine, Sam, we came out of that environment feeling, if I'm honest, pretty frazzled. You got to a point in life where you went, I don't know if I want to be in this environment anymore, because it was very tough, and it was certainly for the thicker skinned. And when we set up Venture Forge, we always built it with a mentality of we're not going to have a successful business without fantastic people. And if you take the ethos of leading with a stick instead of the carrot, and working people really hard and pushing them to the brink of their capabilities and tolerance, all we're going to have is high levels of churn. And in a world where we're servicing clients, and the human relationships between our clients and our people is so paramount to their success and their overall well-being, it's going to be almost impossible to do that. And, did we get it right in the early days? Maybe not quite. And as we've matured and we've understand what our team likes and how to motivate them, that's become something that we can be incredibly proud of now. We've got very, very low staff absence, very high levels of net promoter score and employee satisfaction. And that's something we stand very firmly behind. The trick is going to be, as that scales, can we maintain that? But yeah, I think to your point, Sam, is we were very mindful of it when we built the business, that we wanted a business that people wanted to be part of and wanted to work for.
Yeah. And obviously this is an ops webinar, right? And this is an Ops Nation community, and we're deliberately not framing this as an HR thing. Like a lot of us do wear HR hats, or at least I certainly did. I mean, quick show of hand, how many people in this room have an HR hat or a people hat as well as an ops hat? Is that a common thing? Yeah, most people here have an ops. Yeah, so it is often blended. Yeah, lots of hands up here. So it is definitely a blend of, and this was definitely the case in early doors at Yulife. We now have a people person, but specifically from an ops perspective, this is so flipping important. This is so crucial, because it kind of underpins the main operational delivery of everything else when people are put front and center. And that's something it took me a little bit of time to realize, to be honest, in a business context.
Yeah, I agree. I think by the time an issue, whether that be through poor performance, sickness, absenteeism, becomes an HR problem, it's almost too late to reconcile and fix the operational problem because the damage that's inherently left underneath. Certainly, if you're from a service business like we are, that can cost time, cost, reputation, kudos, and knowledge. That individual could be a linchpin behind 4, 5, 6 very successful, very commercially important relationships. And we have had instances in the past whereby, not from an absenteeism point of view, but from a poor performance point of view, things not dealt with quick enough can lead to much bigger problems commercially for an agency like ours, and I'm sure many others in the room.
And the thing that I was always grappling with, and to be honest, we're still grappling with, is the resource challenge. Like, obviously, everything being equal, I'd love to spend everything to give everyone everything and give everyone, concierge psychological services on a daily basis, and physical well-being checkups and everything that would make them able to perform at the best. Like, an elite sports team has a whole support staff that surrounds every player. But minimum viable, because I think a lot of people on this call are definitely in minimum viable delivery stage. What's the minimum, or not the minimum, but what can we deliver that really hits the objectives and gives something great to people, but fits quite containedly within the budget and the time resources that we've got? That's something that I'm always still thinking about.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think, as businesses change and evolve and the workforce changes and evolves, you might find a period of time when you've got a younger workforce that have a desire for different perks and benefits, or you might have an aging workforce or a different socio-demographic. So I think it's always a difficult one to get right. And I use a phrase quite often internally, and it's a bit of a blunt phrase, but I think it's a useful one to hang on to, is you can't please everyone all of the time. If you try to look at every individual case, you would never manage to do this well. And it is a fine balance. So I think without large budgets or without any budget, my best advice, and what we did in the very early days of the business when we were in kind of startup mode, is we got to know people really well, get to know them on a personal basis, what makes them tick, great one-to-ones, good, healthy personal development plans that don't necessarily need a lot of funding to give those extra perks and benefits that a business will typically have as they start to mature and grow. And for me, praise goes a huge, huge way. And it's not always about saying you've done a great job if you haven't done a great job, but having a very frank and honest conversation about what's going well, how do you do different things, and maybe even thinking about some of the subtleties that, whilst there is an inherent cost, things like flexible working is a great way to reward team members who perhaps have got a family or have got people they need to look after, or just enjoy the flexibility of, I don't want the monotony of a 9 to 5 work. So some of those things don't have an incurred hard cost to them, but they can be deployed in a very simple, really quite an easy way. And I think as long as you've got the trust of your workforce, and the workforce recognizes that there needs to be a policy wrapped around this so it isn't abused, I think some of those things can go a long way. But certainly get to knowing your team. And I recognise in a small team that's inherently easier than if you've got 2,000 or 250. But
I think most of us are probably in that category of we're still small enough. We're operating in teams that we can get to know people. So the purpose of this webinar, that what we wanted to really talk about, was when there's no spare people, when you are at max capacity for the work, for the people, and then if somebody is off, it's going to really create a problem. And what I think the thing that's changing in society, right? There's a government initiative that's being brought in, which is that sick pay is going to have to be paid from the very first day that someone's off. That might add a bit of a financial cost to people, because not only are you not getting the work done, we've got to start paying sick pay. Though many of us probably would have covered salaries, it's become statutory as well as maybe a moral obligation, but definitely a statutory one as well as that. So just, maybe to throw it out there, and Michaela, you're going to do a poll about it, of just the costs that's currently being borne by businesses from not getting this right. So do you want to just take that away, Michaela, with a poll?
Yes, I think I just shared it. And we'll give it a few moments for people just to kind of respond, and then I'll share the results. I think this touches on, just something, as leaders, you'll probably be seeing this at a higher level, but like, where is the work being absorbed? Is the work just not getting done, or are other people then maybe at the cost of burnout or overwhelm too. Because she had lean teams, which a lot of our members are in, or a lot of people on the call are in. You feel it a little bit more, hey?
I mean, I've thrown my hat in there. And I guess it would depend if it's a services business where you've got to deliver regardless, or if someone's a member of there's a backlog of work that's building up. So this is definitely. Should we wait till the polls are in? There we go. So someone else quietly burns out covering it, right? That seems to be the overwhelming majority. It's good that we've got a good conscientious bunch over here. Not many people just drop things, which is nice. And if it gets covered fine, then you guys are in a lovely position. You guys are winning the resourcing wars. But a lot of people are in the vast majority, 73% are in it piles up, or somebody else quietly burns out covering it. And I think that's definitely a reflection of how I feel about what goes on in my business, to be honest. When people are off sick, other people pick up the strain. It then compounds the problem, because those people then start feeling even worse and burning out more, covering the strain of this person who's off sick, and then leading to those people then potentially, God forbid, having to then take time off sick. So you end up with a spiraling, compounding problem, and snapping out of that is really hard. Is that something you've ever seen in your business as you've gone through the journey?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, there's something I was scribbling down some notes there because I guess it's quite a big topic to think about. And I think one really useful thing to think about with your respective businesses is that when there is an issue with employee absenteeism, or just a single person, or there's long-term sicknesses, excuse me, is the team or individuals that are going to step in to help, do they feel like they have to do it, or do they feel like they want to do it? Because there's a very distinct cultural difference there. Those that want to do it, you're probably finding that you've got a really good culture, there's a good sense of camaraderie, and that there is a willingness to not drop the ball, metaphorically.
Yeah. Sure.
If there is those that have to do it, I think inherently I'd be going back and asking some deeper questions around why that feels like it is. But within my business in Venture Forge, we run our business very heavily on SOPs, so standard operating procedures. And I recognize that won't be applicable to everyone in the room, because if there's a very niche skill set and no one else does that role, and that can be the case in small businesses where there might be one finance person, one HR person, and that skill set isn't transferable. That is tough. The bulk of our team are operations. So I guess I've got a slightly easier place that SOPs can be written, can be trained and understood and held centrally. So if one individual is absent, another one can step in. But the thing that we moved into this around 18 months, 2 years ago, and just to explain a little bit about, so each of our senior account managers, the bulk of our operations team, has responsibility to anywhere from 3, 4, 5 individual clients. And historically, their world were their clients, and they establish a really deep, meaningful understanding of that client. But guess what? When they were on holiday or any unexpected sickness, that left a hole in terms of the knowledge that was around the rest of the business. Yes, people could largely transfer and do the job and jump in on an SOP, but they didn't understand intrinsically what was going on with the client. And we made a really simple change. And at the time, it felt incredibly simple, but the effect has been massive. We use Slack as our internal communication tool. Many of you guys will, or other forms of internal comms. And what we did is we created individual client channels. So everyone in the business has exposure to the conversations that are going on in every single client. Now, that might find a bit overkill, because anytime I look at Slack, I've got a lot of messages to have a look at there. But the difference is that if I was suddenly absent from the business, I could confidently know that someone could jump into my Slack channels, understand what I'm working on, look at the background, and have a much more considered handover, because the inherent documentation is there, or the conversations are there. And that's made a huge impact. And I think finally, there's something I call downstream de-escalation. So, sorry, just to finish off, Sam, I think it's very easy for one person to be out and another one to get the workload. And I think as leaders, we're quite often guilty of stopping our thought process there. Great, the work's covered. But what we don't often do is look at the downstream de-escalation of that covering team member is onboarding more work. What can be downstreamed out of their workload into someone else who's in the business? And that makes a handover very easy internally. And it gives the onboarding team member the headspace and the workspace to be able to focus on the new area. Now, you can only do that so many levels before you run out of downstream de-escalation. But that's something that we should all be thinking about. It's not just a one-on-one swap. It's what's the downstream impact that you can alleviate.
It wouldn't be a webinar or it wouldn't be a business conversation if no one mentioned AI, because I don't know if you've checked out Claude Tag yet, which operates within Slack channels. And it acts as a shared AI agent that can collaborate with the people in a certain Slack channel and then deliver a shared agentic output that allows for that kind of collaboration. So within each specific Slack channel, you can then have a sorry, that's just what some of the things that we're working on now internally. Is check it out. Claude Tag is wild, because one of the challenges with AI is that it still exists within each person's individual, Claude instance or Cursor instance or whatever it is. But Claude Tag kind of multiplayer agentic AI, which is cool. Yeah. So I don't know. That might be the evolution of the statement of
absolutely. And I think the more you can share, the more a business gets more familiar with each other's work. It can't be a bad thing, right?
There's one of our early investors called it full team football. At early stages in your business, you want to be playing full team football, where people can play across different roles and jump in. And it's not like, oh, this is my little vertical, I stay within this vertical. If someone needs help from outside my vertical, then good luck to them. We're all in this together and willing to pitch in support. If it's not my specific thing, that's okay, because I'm happy to help and I care and I want to deliver something. That we're ultimately aiming for the same results pyramid. The most important thing is not my little silo, it's the shared goal of the business, and really embedding that we're all working together to deliver the most important outcomes for clients, for investors, for ourselves, whatever it is. And so even if my team is doing something different to what it's supposed to, or it needs support from another team, it's not about the ego of me and my little domain. It's we're all in this together. How can I help?
I think it goes back to that. Do I have to do it? Do I want to do it? And I think businesses who are perhaps retaining their ultimate goals and objectives and annual incentives within their senior leadership team and not cascading it to the wider business, you may get that response of, why do I have to do this? Why is it important? Why do I have to pick up this piece of work? But we're fortunate that way. Well, is it a fortunate thing? I don't know. We're still relatively small. We cascade all of our annual objectives and intent. We cascade that in quarterly business reviews, and then you get that full buy-in by the team to understand this is the direction of travel and why we're doing it.
So I'm going to pull us back again, because we're trending off into the general performance and support, and I love all those topics. Could happily talk about them for hours, but I want to narrow back in a little bit on absence and what happens when people are off sick, and how to prevent that in the first place. And so the thing that is going through my head of what do we do in that preventative cycle? What are we doing to really hello, Mr. Levy Jr. Nice to have a baby on the line. Okay, is driving those kind of interventions, and it's about having the culture is crucial, the support network is crucial, but specifically the interventions that we can drive. Like when you notice that someone is struggling, what tools do you have available? And I'll maybe share a little about what tools we have in place as well.
Yeah,
where do you point someone?
I'm probably going to iterate on some of the points we've already made. So our team member satisfaction score is our biggest mechanism to understand employee sentiment. We are looking to move that to a monthly pulse as well, because I'm very mindful of what can happen in 12 weeks, from I feel great to I'm generally not. And of course, the statistics and the early warning radar, I call it, that's available within Yulife. And I think, looking at a product like Yulife, where team members have 24/7 accessibility to a wellbeing coach, to a virtual GP, all of these things provide, I feel, a virtual comfort blanket to team members who perhaps I don't need it today, but I might need it tomorrow. They might live in a vicinity where access to the NHS services in the UK or a GP is not always easy. And some of that wraparound care can be extremely comforting for those that need it. And especially those that don't necessarily want to talk to their employer, their peers, their friends about this. Having a wellness coach who is completely outside of the business, outside of the family and professional circle, can be incredibly helpful. And, sometimes team members or us as individuals don't need a wholesale reset. Could just be a gentle nudge in a direction that you've not considered, because when the pressure's on or when illness mounts, sometimes it's
Yeah.
difficult to see out the other side of that.
Yeah. I mean, I've personally benefited a huge amount from like coaching at different times in my career and different times when I've been struggling with things. I don't know, coaches, people have coaches. Is anyone like a fan of coaching? Everyone have coaching? Not have coaching?
It's, yeah, I
You've
mean,
had coaching?
something,
But yeah. And so
yeah, lots of them.
having someone outside your little circle, being able to break you out of a pattern of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we something we introduced almost from day one, Sam, I think is worth drawing to individuals' attention, is psychometric profiling tools. And you'll either love them, hate them. Sometimes you might be in between. We work with a business called Mindflick, who use the Spotlight tool to allow individuals to learn more about themselves, what's their strengths, how to get the best from each other. And we give them that tool in order for them to understand, okay, I'm really in my sweet spot. And we all talk about being in your flow, but sometimes you don't quite understand when you're in that flow. So understanding your strengths and weaknesses based on both behavior and mindset can be incredibly powerful. And especially when you're under times of conflict or you're overplaying your strengths and perhaps you're just not quite feeling yourself, you don't understand why you're at loggerheads or you've got some friction with a colleague or a teammate. And even when that goes into kind of, overall health and well-being, getting mental health wrong can have, as we well know, a huge detrimental effect on business performance, individual satisfaction, and overall well-being. And we find that Spotlight profile, and please go and take a look at it. We've got no necessarily tied affinity with Mindflick, but they do some fantastic tools that can really help individuals understand themselves and how to get the best from themselves in order to try and, I guess, self-medicate is probably the wrong word, but, before I have to go to that external bodies, how can I help myself first? And we found that an incredibly useful tool.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that we've done, we do psychometric profiling as well. I've been a big fan of it. We actually use something called the Working Geniuses, which is a slightly different one. It's a bit more about what gives me energy when I'm working. And it's part of the kind of table group, Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I don't know if any of those books have resonated with you. So it's part of that sphere. I found this really helpful because it just, if you know what gives you energy and what excites you and where the way that in which you work best, it allows you to be that kind of level of self-aware to thanks, Oshrina. It gives you that level of self-awareness of, if I'm feeling particularly drained over a week or a month, is it because I've been doing too many things that are in my I can do it but don't love doing it
absolutely,
sphere, and as opposed to making sure that like my life is balanced or my working life is balanced with the things that energize me and give me that, come on, I can,
do you know what, Sam, you make a really interesting point there, because I do wonder how much employee absenteeism is driven from an inherent disconnect between the things that you're good at and the things that you're paid to do. We've all been in roles that perhaps we've not loved, but you soldier on because it pays the way, or you feel that this is the right thing for me to do. But I think having a greater appreciation for oneself, and the point you make there, Sam, is incredibly powerful, because you might find that the fatigue, the illness, metaphorically is linked to you not in your sweet spot. You're not performing to your strengths.
So we spent quite a bit of time on like the emotional side of things, high performance based on feeling connected, feeling inspired, feeling empowered, working in your lane of most highest productivity, and feeling supported by the business and passionate about the business. There are instances, and Ashwini, you brought it out in the chat before, physical conditions play a big part. My chap who had a back issue, it wasn't because he was stressed. Maybe that played a bit of a part of it, but it was a mechanical problem with his spine. If you've got team members who've got, and you mentioned like an autoimmune condition, or there are, God forbid, a whole bunch of, there's a whole domain of physical well-being that isn't just connected to your performance at work or if you're doing a task you're enjoying. What are the warning signs or the flags that do you have anything in place that helps people spot physical challenges and identifies them early for intervention?
No, I'd love to answer every question you've got, Sam, with a really great scenario that we've got this covered. I think this is an area that we would be really quite weak on. And I go back to my point about being a virtual business. I spend most of my working day, week, month, life, not even realizing anyone's got a body below the waist.
Right.
Because all I see is this, typically speaking.
He's not wearing trousers,
I-
by the way, guys, just to be really clear. Like
yeah,
Jonathan is there in his boxers.
it's quite warm in Yorkshire today. I think it emphasizes the emphasis on human connection. Getting together with your teams informally, formally, quarterly, ad hoc, nights out, whatever that might be, coming together in person, I think reconnects humans to humans, and that's what makes us good about spotting things that may happen.
Yeah.
We don't have any formal process to identify physical ailments. That's something that we would need to give some real consideration to and thought. But I suspect it's more challenging perhaps in a virtual environment like we are. I'd be keen to hear from anyone that's got experience in the physical workplace where it may be easier to pick up on some of those clues that might be unearthed.
Kind of this government drive, right, of shifting the burden onto employers is real. This is the NHS is creaking, sadly, in many areas. It's very hard to get appointments in time. It's very hard to get the care that's going to really be preventative. The NHS can be good in extreme emergencies, but they just generally don't have the bandwidth to deal with preventing problems before they come up. That's something that we think a lot about at Yulife from a product perspective. The health and well-being data that comes from people's apps, the amalgamating that for absent, predicting absence off the back of that physical data signals. If someone's step count drops, that's not just they're going to earn less Ucoin and get less rewards, but that's actually real hard signals.
Interesting clue, actually. Yeah, really
that we then feed back in, right? And it's those prevention pathways, whether it's physio or whether it's, and you maybe think of going to get a blood check or whatever it might be, really crucial for this next stage.
I think there is a fine balance between understanding your team as best you can and giving preventative measures and tools without crossing into we're not healthcare professionals, and we have to draw a very distinct line between when has an individual maxed out their potential for care. And I think we have to be really careful with that. Sorry, I'm stuttering because I'm thinking this through. I've got a better way to put this, but I think there comes a time and a place where employees have to hand off to more skilled individuals, and the preventative care is absolutely the right thing to do, Sam. I couldn't agree more. But there will be a time when we've gone, we don't understand this enough now, and we have to then tee you up with a virtual GP or a wellness coach, and then they can take that next measure to pass you on to healthcare professionals who may need that depth of support.
A quick show of hands around here. Do people have private health cover? Is private health cover something that businesses offer? Maybe do a hands up or a few hands up, a few hands. Don't know if there's a way of tracking that. There's some hands. A lot of thumbs down. Oh, there's some big ones. Oh, I don't know if there's a poll off the back of this, but I think it's an interesting one because obviously the premier offering that a company can provide is that private health cover, which allows for intervention and health cash plans. That's a really good one. So Yulife actually, sorry, I can't help it. I love to, but we just launched the market leading health cash plan with Bupa. Health cash plan is if you've got an out-of-pocket medical expense. For those of you who don't know, it's much cheaper than private healthcare. Private healthcare can cost about £100 per person per month as an employer to pay for it. A cash plan can be in the realm of £10 to £15 per person per month. And if an employee wants to get physiotherapy, the cash plan will pay back. If the employee wants to get, like a complementary therapy, maybe that's osteopathy or something, it'll pay. Or optical care, dental care, it'll pay back a cash amount for each session that employees want to get up to a certain maximum. So it's much cheaper than a full PMI, but can really help with those early interventions if needed, if they're well signposted.
I think we'd be in a wonderful place as a society where that was mandated. Now, clearly, the cost of businesses would be huge, and there'd be many businesses on here, inclusive of our own, where we're just not at a point of maturity yet where we can roll out PMI into every team member. But I think it would be a fantastic tool for preventative care. It would be an amazing tool for retention because, of course, it's not commonplace across the UK industry, certainly not at certain levels of seniority anyway. It'd be a wonderful place if we could all get there. But I suspect the barrier to most businesses is the inherent cost to do that.
Yeah, such a nice segue. The last poll maybe that we were going to pop out, Michaela, you wanted to, the biggest blocker to supporting more wellbeing proactively. Sounds like you're definitely in the budget space, Jonathan, on this one.
Certainly for PMI, yes, not
Yeah,
necessarily the wider point, but yeah.
yeah. And interesting to see if everyone's answering those questions as they come through.
I actually think it would have been great to have a fifth option on there. And sorry, Michaela, this is not a criticism of the poll, but back to my point earlier around that there is a real challenge in trying to please everyone all of the time. I think businesses in a lot of instances will go, if I have got a limited budget or I've only got a certain discretionary budget per team member, where can that be deployed so I get the best value, I get the best preventative solutions that pleases the masses? And I think sometimes that's a difficult point in its own right.
Yeah. Great question, Christine. How it would be helpful to know where and how to benchmark benefits based on the area and stage of the business. Something we do like that all day for companies, quite honestly, as part of the consulting that we do. So happy to chat, but it's really something that our clients often speak about. Is like, am I at the right stage for this? Is it too early for me to offer something so expensive like PMI? What are the other options? What are the things that I could prove a business case back to my CEO for? How could I create the right business case for implementing X, Y, and Z? That's the conversations that we're having on a daily basis. And so helping to understand what the right benchmarks are for different areas, different people, that's a really important part of it, because also we just want to kind of do the right thing. I hear that a lot from clients, is we just want to do the right thing.
Yeah. I think it's always the immoral balance between this is the right thing to do and what's the ROI, right?
Yeah.
And in some cases, look, when we embedded many of our employee value proposition, including Yulife, we were less concerned with what the ROI was, because we had a growing workforce where we knew that without our team fully engaged in work, we don't have a business. So it was a cost of doing business. But of course, there'll reach a point when we scale our number of team members where we do have to start to look close at the ROI. And for many businesses on the call who have got tens of hundreds of thousands of team members, that ROI has to take precedence over this is the right thing to do. So I think to your point, Sam, conducting audits with a business who understands benchmarking and where you are in your life cycle, to Christine's question, is a really critical first step.
Rebecca kindly reminded me that we actually put out a actual survey of this. So having forgotten what a wonderful marketing team created this resource, which is the benefits benchmark report, which is just dropped in the chat. So that has proper robust data from over 400 businesses about who does what at what stages of company. Michaela, you were giving me very strict instructions beforehand that at Q2 we were going to take a bit of a time for audience questions. Handing over to you maybe to elicit that from the wonderful participants here.
And Sam, I think I actually gave you it was very explicit where I said 47 passed. So you nailed it. Thank you.
I've got a German passport, so like I need to run by the...
Never has there been two more operationally driven people on a call, Michaela, that can be that accurate on time.
You can run all of our calls. You're welcome. You're welcome to come in. Amazing. But yeah, so I know we've had some incredible chats, and like I think that what we've just been able to see between both from both of your perspectives is like definitely that kind of wider, larger thought process that goes behind all of it, which is really, really valuable. And then also like, then how do we do it operationally? And then I also know in the poll results that we saw, budget is a big kind of thing that can impact like around people being able to support well-being, especially for lean teams, and what we see in like, especially I think earlier stage teams as well. And then proving it's worth it is the other one. So we can always get onto that. But just want to open up the room for anyone who has any other questions. Feel free to pop in the chat. Might take you a moment to think about it. That's totally fair. Or if you want to, speak, you're more than welcome to come off mute or raise your virtual hand. You raise your real hand, I just might not see it. You could do both. But we'll leave some time for that. And to kick us off with questions, if we don't have anything come in quite right away. I guess going to kind of what we just saw in the poll and the results, my question is, okay, let's say you are the ops manager, head of ops in a company who might have the remit underneath them of employee well-being. How do you, like, what sort of data should you be gathering to prove that it's worth it to, let's say, the exec team or higher ups?
Yeah, it's a great
I think that's one for you, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just capturing, like, what is this really costing us right now? And you can either do a proxy for it by numbers of days off, you do an audit over with some businesses don't really capture time off, even that, if someone's off for a month, you might have it captured. But if someone were just to take an afternoon off or a day off, that might not be captured. So to put in a concerted effort over a period of time to really benchmark how much time are we losing, what's the impact of the morale of the team, what's the impact on the other people around them when someone is sick, and that drain and the burnout that can come from having to pick up someone else's work. We dashboard all that up for companies when they're Yulife customers, because we can see from the health and wellbeing data that's feeding through from our app on a daily basis. But if you're trying to prove the business case from scratch, start with that data collection exercise, understanding what the problem is currently costing you in real money. Because well-being is often seen, as we started the call, well-being is often seen as like fluffy stuff. And we're here from an ops perspective, people running businesses, all of us caring about the bottom lines and the P&Ls of those businesses. And we realize, I think, as a group, that this is not a fluffy well-being problem. This is a hard operations business deliverables and results-oriented problem when people aren't able to perform at their best, or we aren't even at work to perform at all. So benchmarking that data as it currently stands, and then extrapolating, if we were to fix 10% of this problem, what would it be worth? If we were to fix 50% of the problem, what would it be worth to the business? And therefore, what are we willing to spend to try and deliver that?
I think to build on that point, Sam, measuring the actual physical cost of absenteeism is a fantastic start. But I'd also encourage the room to think about your other KPIs within your business. Perhaps if you're a manufacturing business, look at output as an example, or production time. If you're a service business, look at client satisfaction. Is there any metrics that you can fundamentally think can link to employee dissatisfaction or absenteeism? Because then you can start to look at a more widespread cost, not just about the internal lost cost of time. So every business will have a metric that you can link to this. What slips when people are not there, when people are absent or underperforming, what slips, and try and work that back.
Great. That's crucial.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Thank you both. And then, we're getting more questions to the chat. So we'll go to Ashrina, just around the question that she had around the UK for private healthcare / insurance provided by companies.
Market, I'll just answer that really fast. The market is growing 10-15% year on year. So for a big established industry, that is massive growth. I mean, we're seeing companies increasingly seeking to offer PMI where they can afford it, and it is becoming certainly amongst even smaller earlier stage businesses, it's becoming a conversation much sooner than in the past, because for many employees, accessing healthcare in a timely way is becoming really challenging, sadly.
Yeah. Thanks.
Remote work. I mean, Jonathan, you're the, or maybe it seems like your policy is all in on it. Is there anyone on the call who's got a different approach to it, or we're also quite flexible, to be honest.
This is a more generalized point around remote work. We're remote because we want the best people to serve our clients, and they don't happen to be in a 60-minute drive time of any particular location in the UK. So it's a prerequisite for us. But you have to work incredibly hard at culture. You have to be working incredibly hard at understanding your team, because those invisible points, sometimes what's not said is far more detrimental and far more concerning than what is being said. And I'm just looking at the chat. Michelle Verger, you asked a question around psychological safety and any pointers to making this a business case. Um, I don't know, is the honest answer. I think I'm going to go back to the statement I've just made. A team without psychological safety is probably not speaking what needs to be said. And that will have an intangible challenge to something in your business. It'll be the watercolor movements, it'll be the small subtleties and dissatisfaction. And I think if you find a mechanism whereby you can allow for more psychological safety, and it doesn't have to be a huge app or a tool or a process, it could be as simple as an anonymous way of capturing data. Allow people to speak freely without fear of persecution. And the reality is you will increase psychological safety just by doing that, and therefore you'll flush out the problems. And that can be a complete no-cost option. Build a quick Google form, put it out in a Pulse. Yulife, as an example, have got some fantastic Pulse mechanisms where you can put together very quick surveys. So I hope I've answered your question, Michelle. I think proving a case for it will be difficult. Trying to evidence what's not being said, I think, is the trick to unlocking that whole conversation.
Just to add to that, what's one of the best ways to embed psychological safety in a business? Leaders going first. You're never going to build a vulnerability-based trust environment if you're like, great, we're now going to have a trust session. I want everyone to tell me what's wrong, and I'm going to sit here and listen. And people just, that's not going to resonate, right? If I start the conversation, I've noticed that these and these things are wrong, and I've been grappling with that as a leader. I felt a bit down about some of these things. I'm really excited about some of these other things. Does anyone else have something they'd like to share about what's generally going on in this company? And
Sam,
the
I think
leader going first.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly powerful point. We can apply it to such simple things. For instance, we promote a work from anywhere, work however policy, as long as you're getting your best work done. And if I decide to go to the gym at a throwaway time, 10:15 in the morning, right in the middle of my working day, I'll make sure I put that on Slack. I'll show an indicator that I've gone to the gym, because that might be encouraging me to think differently. It could be that I need a mental break, and I want to show the team that you do not have to be sat at your desk for 7.5 hours a day from 9 till 5. If you want to go and walk the dog, have a break, have a sleep, go to the gym, as long as you're getting your best work done, do what you need to do. Humans are complex. We're not machines. We need respite. We need to do different things.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I saw Ashrina just added, I also have one more question, but I like your question better, Ashrina. One more question for the session. But I'll request if you guys can keep it to like 30 seconds each. And then we'll wrap it up with just thank yous at the end. So for both of you, you get what's the biggest well-being mistake you've made as a COO? And then also I'm going to add, and one thing you could do on Monday, if there was one thing you would do in terms of well-being for the team.
All right. Biggest well-being mistake I've made as COO. I think the biggest things I've done wrong is keeping, it's a kind of broader mistake, I guess, but it has really impacted people's well-being, is keeping wrong people in the business who are then impacting others negatively. Because a lot of stress at work comes from having a bad boss or a bad colleague who's toxic or really undermining you. And the worst mistakes that I've made that have probably been the most painful for the people around is when I've kept the wrong person either in the wrong role or just in the business for longer than they should have been, because I was blind to it, or I was too scared to act, or I was nervous of the impact it would have on a client, and not biting that bullet and making a change. That's probably, I don't know if it counts as a well-being mistake, but I've definitely screwed up on that quite a few times.
Good shout, Sam. I think for me, there's probably a few things I can throw at this. In the interest of time, I'm going to speak very much from the heart. I think operations guys are always seen as being quite mechanical and quite linear, so I'm going to speak very personally. When employee dissatisfaction peaks or employee absenteeism peaks, I think as a co-founder and in a small business in particular, you can take that incredibly personally. And it's took me a long time to find the maturity to recognize that it's not a personal slur. Humans are complex. We don't always get things right.
Yeah.
I'm now okay with things that are not going particularly well. as long as you've got the attention to detail and know how to address it. Not necessarily fix it, because we can't fix everything, but facing into the challenges is an okay thing and not taking it too personally.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Both of those are really good answers. And both of them are kind of uncomfortable, which I think makes them, well, you know, you're just thinking about it, right? Like owning mistakes and owning criticism, and also having to let go of someone if they're actually not creating psychological safety within the team as well. Yeah, no. Okay, well, we have 1 minute till the end of the hour, and we like to end promptly because I know everyone is busy and we might have 3 p.m. meetings after this. So just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us for today's session. And a big thank you to Sam and Jonathan